Welcome to episode 10 of the Solo Sideline. I'm your host, Conor. Reminder to like, rate, subscribe to the pod on any podcast services. Listening to this podcast will improve your health. Listen to it as you meal prep for the week. Please engage with me on Instagram or Twitter. My name is the Solo Sideline. I want this podcast to be all sports and no fluff, and some items that didn't make the cut today. Carolina Hurricanes won the Stanley Cup Finals and had their championship parade. The New York Knicks had their championship parade. The debate rages on about who the best player in the NBA is. I think it's really vacant at this moment because it can't go back to Jokic after losing in round one to an injured Wolves team, and it isn't Shea since he lost to Wemby, and of course it's not Wemby since we saw him run out of steam in the finals. But going down that tangent's a little tricky right now because it's also not Jalen Brunson. I think the crown is vacant at the moment, and we'll figure it out next year. I think Wemby may have lost some fans since we saw him be a dirty player this year, elbowing Naz Reid, pushing Brunson down, trash talking and laughing. The trash talking's fine, but just not a fan of the dirty plays. And Caitlin Clark showcased her new shoes, the Nike Caitlin Ones. They look pretty amazing, and in case Nike or Clark are listening, I wear size 11s. We're going to do a new segment this week called Quick Hitters. Since these are some topics I go into detail about, but it's not really fluff. So, starting out with some quick hitters. Bo Nix is healthy and practicing for the Broncos during mandatory minicamp. I said before, and will reiterate it now. The backlash and worry from the Denver media and media as a whole regarding his second ankle surgery was way premature and unwarranted. It was, quite frankly, overblown. He just had a cleanup procedure, and he was ahead of schedule then, and remains ahead of schedule now. The media as a whole blew this story way out of proportion and made it much bigger than it needed to be. He's going to be healthy for week 1, and he's going to be throwing touchdowns to Jalen Waddle against the Chiefs and come out with a win. Another quick hitter is the 2016 Cleveland Cavaliers team had a reunion in Europe and had fun golfing together, drinking wine, and eating good food. The group consisted of Channing Frye, Tristan Thompson, J.R. Smith, Kevin Love, and LeBron James. And then some other players joined late. Matty Dellavedova joined late. But people were wondering where Kyrie Irving was. And then J.R. posted a comment saying that he ghosted the team, which seems odd. He and LeBron have made up and are cool now, but the bigger story is that the feeling around the league is that LeBron is going to re-sign with LA, and somehow Kevin Love is going to join him. That seems like an odd fit. He's just going to be an end-of-the-bench player. And in the NBA, end-of-the-bench players are useful. I mean, Udonis Haslem was one of them for the Miami Heat. He was one until he was about 40 years old. Never really played, but he brought along the young guys, gave his veteran experience and leadership when they made the playoffs or win a close game. The Lakers had one in the bubble, Jared Dudley, who's now a coach of the Mavericks, I believe. So having an end-of-the-bench player is good. I mean, he can come in, set a screen here or there, play 3 minutes, come out. If injuries happen, he can come in, hit a shot. Maybe it's a way to entice LeBron to sign back with LA. I'm not sure. Going back to the Myles Garrett trade to the Rams, it's come to light what Jared Verse said to the Rams players before leaving. He said, quote, "Make sure you beat the Seahawks." Seems like the Hawks live rent-free in Verse's head and the Rams players for that fact. Sure, the 3 games they played last year were all very close, with Seattle winning 2 of them, and arguably the most important 2. Some could say the Rams traded for Myles Garrett to compete and beat Seattle. May the best team win, but we know who that's going to be. It's going to be Seattle. Trae Young, point guard of the Washington Wizards, declined his $49 million player option to become a free agent. The Wizards, now this is a little old news, the Wizards were interested in extending him, which makes sense since they traded for him mid-year last year, but then he was injured. And the Hawks, being younger, maybe they needed to see what the younger talent was on their roster. So they traded Trae to the Wizards for C.J. McCollum and Corey Kispert. The Wizards also traded for Anthony Davis last year and believe Young and Davis could be an all-star duo that could lift the team to the playoffs. In order for that to happen, though, they would have to re-sign Trey to a long-term deal and keep AD happy with their plan. Rumors began circulating that AD wants out and has asked for a trade. It sounds like AD might just be posturing here a little bit, trying to get a max contract. So if he doesn't get a max with the Wizards, then he might want to get traded and go elsewhere who could extend him and give him a max deal. His issue is also staying healthy. Update on the Trey Young. They did extend him. I believe it was a 4 or 5 year deal for about $46 million per year. So he's going to be on the Wizards for the foreseeable future. Trey Young is, at least. Now, Devin Booker of the Phoenix Suns is changing his number from 1 to 15. As some may know, Kobe, R.I.P., did this same thing, going from 8 to 24. And Booker really looks up to Kobe. Apparently, Booker's hoping to get both his numbers retired by the Suns, but I'm not sure why his number would be retired at all, since he hasn't won anything there. Sure, Booker's a 5-time All-Star, 2-time Olympic gold medal winner, and is the all-time leading scorer for the Suns. For being the franchise's leading scorer, he will probably have his jersey retired, which to me seems like a low bar. He scores points in the regular season and has very little playoff success, other than making the finals when they had Chris Paul, and they had a 2-0 lead against Giannis and the Bucks, but then proceeded to lose 4 straight games. Giannis literally walked Booker down, and Booker couldn't do anything to stop it. To me, Devin Booker's a Robin and not a Batman. Kevin Durant had an interview over the weekend and said that when he joined the Warriors, he felt like he was joining an underdog team. His explanation was, quote, "They've never been a winning organization. Nobody liked Golden State. I'm looking at the totality of the franchise. Now keep in mind," no, that's the end of the quote, sorry. "Now keep in mind the Warriors were coming off back-to-back final appearances, with winning in 2015 and then followed that season up with a 73-win season, which is the best regular season in NBA history. They had a 3-1 comeback against Durant and the Thunder in the Western Conference Finals, but then had the infamous 3-1 blown finals lead against LeBron and the Cavs. So Durant joined a team led by Stephen Curry in his prime, Klay Thompson also in his prime, and Draymond Green, who was arguably coming off his best game from Game 7. And that was the team that had a 3-1 lead against LeBron, and the team that also literally just beat Kevin Durant. Not sure I would call that team an underdog. But here we are 10 years after that decision, and KD is still trying to convince people not to call it a weak move or the ultimate, if you can't beat them, then join them mentality. I 100% think if KD never joined Golden State, that he wouldn't have a ring at all. Kyrie probably wouldn't have left LeBron in Cleveland, and LeBron would have at least 5 rings. That single choice affected the NBA in so many ways. A thing that I've seen in the past and come up again last week is the media talking on social media and other outlets and presenting it as their own. The example from last week is a Twitter account, Dr. Jesse Morse, stating that Jaylen Brown had unfollowed and removed anything Celtic related on his social media. He posted this without fact-checking it, which is very easy to do. You go to Brown's social media yourself and see about it. See if there's anything Celtic related. Then Jay Williams went on a show called Get Up on ESPN and said it on TV as if it were fact. This is just spreading misinformation about a situation, and especially with something that is so easy to just check. An athlete removing their team-affiliated content may not seem like a big deal, but typically players do that before a trade happens, or it's during contract negotiations, or they're just unhappy with their team. My issue is if someone is going to post something, especially someone who should have integrity like a doctor, go through the process of fact checking it, making sure the information is valid before you report it. And then for ESPN to air that same misinformation is not a good look. To me, people are more concerned with being the first to report anything and get the views, clicks, likes, whatever, instead of actually reporting the facts, and that's a shame. Now we're going to go on to the NFL. And this is going to be the curious case of Brendan Sorsby. Every year, the NFL decides if they will hold a supplemental draft if there's some approved prospects. The last supplemental draft was held in 2023. This is an additional draft that the NFL conducts for players who have had their college eligibility impacted for one reason or another and couldn't or didn't enter the regular draft that the NFL holds in April. An NFL team uses a future draft pick from next year's draft to draft a player that they want. The order of the supplemental draft is not decided by regular season record, but split out into 3 groups. The first group is the teams with 6 or fewer wins in the previous season, followed by the non-playoff teams, and then last but not least, the 14 playoff teams. The order in each group is randomly selected. So out of the playoff teams, you could have the Seahawks picking first out of the playoff teams, even though they won the Super Bowl. So a couple names drafted in the supplemental draft in previous years that you guys may know would be Josh Gordon in 2012, Terrell Pryor in 2011, Ahmad Brooks in 2006, Brian Bosworth and Chris Carter in 87, and Bernie Kosar in 85. This year, we were going to see Brendan Sorsby drafted after a gambling scandal that he went to rehab for. He admitted to placing thousands of bets, wagering around $90,000 on college games, including his own Indiana games back in 2022. The NCAA deemed him ineligible to play this year permanently, but a court has ruled an injunction on this, and Sorsby would be suspended just 2 games if he decided to suit up for a Texas Tech team. However, Sorsby decided to hang it up for college and declare for the NFL, and is eligible for the supplemental draft. The general vibe is that Sorsby will be a 3rd-round pick, but if a team views him as their guy, then they could be tempted to put in a 2nd-round wager on him. Now, there could be a lot of misinformation and rumors about how teams view Sorsby to throw other teams off and allow him to fall to a later round in the draft. This is also common practice for the regular NFL draft. Draft season is always referred to as the lying season. I won't ever say I'm a draft expert, but I'll give my take on players from what I've seen in game clips and just the eye test. For example, I wasn't a fan of Johnny Manziel when he was coming out of college. I thought he had too much of an ego, I didn't like his personality, and I was proven to be right. Now on the flip side, I was a fan of the Broncos drafting Paxton Lynch and Drew Lock, and was wrong on both of those accounts. Fun fact though, both of those former Broncos ended up with Seattle, but only Lock was actually on the regular season roster, and now Drew's a Super Bowl winner and got a ring. Good for him. Going back to Sorsby though, he's 22 years old, 6'3", which is the prototypical quarterback height. He has a big arm, which is great. He can make any throw and adjust his arm angle without losing throw power. On the flip side, having a big arm means he knows he can make throws based on his strength and has to work on his mechanics, especially his footwork. And with a strong arm, a gunslinger mentality usually forms and could lead to some interceptions. Sometimes that can be coached out, like Josh Allen has cut down his interception rate, and other times it can't, like a Brett Favre. Now, if Sorsby turns into a quarterback of Brett Favre or Josh Allen's caliber, that's definitely a steal. Sorsby is also a mobile quarterback. He's more of a Josh Allen or a Bo Nix mobility than a Lamar Jackson or Jaden Daniels. But if he sees a running lane, he's going to tuck the ball and run. He had 9 rushing touchdowns in each of the last 2 seasons and ended his collegiate career with 22 total rushing touchdowns. A scout told the New York Times that Sorsby would have been a second-round pick, and they actually liked him more than Ty Simpson, who went 13th overall to the Rams. Which, if that's the case, Sorsby would have probably ended up being a first-round pick this past draft. Quarterbacks are often drafted higher based on importance of the position, since quarterbacks literally touch the ball every single snap on offense, and they impact games. Teams typically overdraft them. Now, will a team mortgage a first or second round pick in next year's draft on him? No, unequivocally, absolutely not. If a team did that, they would be the laughingstock of the league and media and would just be mocked. Why do I say that? Sure, Sorsby has talent, but the troubled background. Teams look the other way on things, especially if the player has talent, but next year's draft class is a strong class and is due in large part to the crop of quarterbacks coming out. Sorsby has fallen apart in each of the last 2 seasons, and it's come down to the end of the year in November, and that's when NFL teams want to be hitting their stride and preparing for the playoffs. He is 0-8 over the last 2 years and has had some strange losses. When the team is rolling and winning, all is swell, but once a loss happens, he doesn't really rally the team for a bounce back. He lacks the it factor. I also think the mental toll of gambling addiction and headlines will have a toll on Sorsby. I don't know if he's mentally strong enough to wither that. If you can't really rally a team during a losing streak, I don't know how being questioned by media nonstop about your own gambling addiction, going to rehab is going to affect you. And now after all of that, after the whole Sorsby in-depth thing, it came out today that the NFL will not hold the supplemental draft. Part of the reason was only Sorsby applied for the draft, and before he applied, the league wasn't going to hold one anyway. Since his application came only when the NCAA said he can't play college ball, and his legal trouble goes against what the image that the league wants to present, they're not going to do him any favors. In a letter that was sent to Brendan, they informed him of this decision, laid it all out there, and then said focus on the 2027 draft. In a stacked 2027 quarterback draft class, he's probably not going to be a first-round pick, and probably will hear his name get called on day 3, if at all. He's going to be out of football for a year, unless he plays for a league that isn't the NFL or college. He brings major baggage, and the NFL likes to see the players perform now. It doesn't stand for not for long for no reason. Now, what we could see with Sorsby is him become the modern-day Chad Powers, go a little undercover with a different name, and somehow play for like the Canadian League or be a street free agent that the NFL picks up. Just for food for thought. Fun little thing there. Now we're going to go to the NBA. The NBA draft starts tonight, since I record this on Tuesdays. Right now, the first round's going on. And rumors were that Giannis would be traded before the draft, and that happened to be the case when he was traded Monday night. Giannis was traded to the Heat, in addition to Bobby Portis, for Tyler Hero, Khalil Ware, Hami Jaquez, Kasparis Yakinas, and 3 first-round picks, including the 13th overall pick that happened tonight, 1 pick swap, and a second-rounder. I feel like Miami's going to have some more additions through free agency or minor trades, because their starting 5 is Devon Mitchell, Norman Powell, but he's probably not going to resign. He's a free agent, and he's probably going to leave the team for more money. Andrew Wiggins, but that's only if he picks up his player option. Giannis, and then bam. They'll make the playoffs, barring some sort of injury, but probably not past the second round. They need Powell to resign, or they need to add shooting. And since I don't think Powell's going to resign, they need to add some shooting somehow. Having just Bam and Giannis won't make you contenders, even if Bam just set the new record for the second most points scored in a single game with 83. Gonna reiterate it here. Miami needs to add shooting and depth. Giannis isn't known for his shooting, and the Heat just lost a lot of depth for two players. And with the injuries that stack up in the NBA and Giannis's injury history last couple seasons, he can't be trusted to play 60 games anymore. So the Heat definitely need to re-up their depth, their bench, and add scoring. Because right now you just have Bam and Giannis back there clogging up the lanes. No one really to kick it out to hit threes besides Wiggins, but he has a player option, so who knows if he even picks it up or comes back. Yeah. Their defense is going to be crazy with Bam and the Greek Freak back there, able to lock down the paint, block shots, shut down driving lanes, but their offense is going to struggle. In my opinion, the Heat are about as good as they were at this point last year. Not trying to be a hot take guy here, but they lost a lot of shooting and depth for one superstar player and Bobby Portis. The Heat finished the season as the 10th seed with a record of 43-39, and they just traded away their second leading scorer and hero, who only played 33 games. Norman Powell, who was the leading scorer, is probably not going to resign and get a larger payday elsewhere. So there goes an average of 40-plus points walking out your door. Sure, Giannis is going to pick up some scoring slack, but as I just said, he dealt with some injuries in the past couple seasons, so he's not super dependable. And the best attribute Giannis has is he can drive the ball to the hoop, get a dunk or an easy layup. But what adds another dimension is he kicks it out to the perimeter for a knockdown shooter to hit the three. And having three-point shooters also opens up driving lanes for him, and then bam. The fit isn't the best, and almost seems like Giannis wants to just end his career in a warm and fun city like Miami over Milwaukee or Boston. Honestly, the Heat are now just like the Bucks, a team that isn't ready to contend yet and now has no way of getting better immediately. The only difference is Miami has palm trees and is warm. On the Bucks side of things, they got good value but really should have traded Giannis last summer or at the deadline last year. Instead, they tried to retool around him by waiving and stretching Damian Lillard's contract, which has a cap hit of $20.5 million per year for Milwaukee through the 2030 season. They did that so they could trade for Miles Turner and attempt to appeal to Giannis and show him we're still in win-now mode. It didn't work. Giannis dealt with injuries, and the Bucks missed the playoffs. But back to their trade haul. The most important pieces are probably the draft picks and a couple players. Their team needs a lot of moves to get back to contention. And I think we're just going to see them sort of flounder aimlessly, ideally pick high in drafts for a couple years. Can't do top 5 3 years in a row. So I think it's definitely going to be just a patient wait-and-see approach for Milwaukee, which is unfortunate for the sports fans because fans want to see their teams do well and succeed, and you don't really sell tickets for a team that sucks. Now, I do think Milwaukee's going to reroute some of their players they receive in the deal, like Tyler Hero, to Detroit, or a team that needs an additional three-point shooter, and they can trade Miles Teller or Khalil Ware to a team like the Lakers, who need a center to play alongside Luka. That way, the Bucks will receive more assets, probably in the form of draft picks, for these players, and then can view that as one large trade. Now, a team that definitely lost this, that's not even included in this trade, would be the Boston Celtics. And I know someone who's probably a little salty and frustrated that his team didn't land Giannis and now seems to have burned a bridge with Jaylen Brown. And that is none other than Dave Portnoy. But in all seriousness, the Celtics having their trade package leak out is not good for them, especially since it was headlined by Jaylen Brown. And Jaylen Brown has been included in trade rumors in the past. Back in 2022, he was involved in trade rumors for packages that were for Kevin Durant. This was before the Celtics won the championship, and Brown was then the finals MVP. But now it's been reported by Shams and others that the Celtics made Brown available for Giannis. Players typically are okay being in trade rumor, and we all know professional sports is a business, and the team you play for isn't always loyal to the players, but they want to get better, lower the check, that the owner's right, whatever. I think there's a chance Brown formally demands a trade now, and the team has burned that bridge for Jalen staying. And I say this because after the season, he went on that Twitch stream and said this was his favorite season, and that's when he was leading the team, all of that stuff. And players don't like to be included in trade rumors every single year or most years. Now, the media have come out and said being included in trade rumors for these types of players is actually a compliment. It means you're a great player. But as a competitive person, you wouldn't want to feel like your team doesn't want you. So I think they have to listen to offers. They don't have to trade him, but I think they have to listen to offers and see what they can get for Jaylen Brown. To me, it seems like the Celtics don't view what they have currently, Jaylen Brown, and next year a healthy Jason Tatum, as championship contenders. So they're trying to get better, trying to retool their roster and fight for a championship, beat the defending champs, the Knicks. And then we had another trade that happened in the NBA before the Giannis blockbuster trade last night. We saw Julius Randle get traded to the Nets and Nick Claxton go to the Bulls for basically just a salary dump. The Bulls got Nick Claxton for nothing, and it was just some picks that were moved around for Julius Randle. And then the Timberwolves used that available cap space to re-sign Ayo, who is a star. But the bigger story is they have a now $33 million trade exception. The Wolves have that. So was a bigger move coming, or was it just a straight salary dump so the owner doesn't have to write as big of a check to the league? And then within that storyline, Anthony Edwards, their star player, seems a little frustrated behind the scenes that he wants to win now. He was upset when the Timberwolves traded Karl Anthony Towns to the Knicks because they were tight, they were close, and now Anthony Edwards gets doubled a lot more. So Ant wants another star player to join him so he can take some of the offensive burden off of his shoulders. He doesn't get doubled as much. He can score more points. They can ideally win a championship. And Giannis's preferred locations actually leaked out after the trade went down, and Minnesota was the only team in the Western Conference that Giannis was okay signing an extension with. Yet Minnesota didn't seem that involved in the Giannis sweepstakes. So I'm sure that doesn't sit well with Anthony Edwards. So, next week we'll probably have more NBA trades. We're going to go more in detail on the NBA draft. Probably some news out of training camps with the NFL teams. So that brings us to the end of the episode. I hope you enjoyed your time listening to me talk sports, share my opinions and thoughts. Don't forget to subscribe on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and other podcast services. Find me on Instagram and Twitter at the Solo Sideline. And I hope you tune in next week for the next episode.